Good morning, UCC. We are going to open up today with a little game called Pastoral Confession. And I'm just going to confess some things to you about who I am. And if you know me, some of these things won't be a surprise, and some of those things might. Biggest thing about me, biggest flaw, the thing that God didn't sprinkle really into my DNA as a person when he was thinking to create me, is organization. I'm probably one of the most disorganized people that there absolutely ever is. It means that systems, I have to have them in place or I will not follow them. I will be a hot mess running from one thing to the next thing, losing my hairbrush, losing the right clothes, and most of all, frequently, losing my keys. There's one spot in our house that the keys go on. There's a little key hook. And typically, I'm really great about putting keys over there. And when they're not great, I'm also really great about blaming my husband when they're not where they're supposed to be. In fact, I can tell you in the last 2 months, probably some of our biggest fights have been over the keys. Where are my keys? Where are those keys? Where have these keys been? In fact, we had this giant blowout about 2 weeks ago because I was like, no, listen, you have got to be kidding me. I saw these keys in your hand. Where are they at? And he's like, I don't have the keys. I'm like, I don't have the keys. And literally it was about World War III in our home over these keys. And he looks at me and he's like, Ashley, it's going to take a miracle for you to be able to stay organized and put things back where they're supposed to go. Well, I'm happy to report that God is a miracle worker and there's these awesome things I've discovered called AirTags. Pretty awesome. With my phone, I can just beep with my watch, hey, where's my iPhone at? And with AirTags, I can see where things are at all times. So now there's really no need for me to ever put the keys back where they're supposed to go. And we laugh about this a little bit, but funny question, have you ever been in a place where you're just praying for miracles? I bet all of us have those little miracles that we have been praying for. Okay, you go to Costco on a Saturday, at 1 p.m., the number one thing that you are praying for, whether you know it or not, is you're praying for a parking spot that's not all the way out in Timbuktu. Or, moms, are you with me? Praying for Family Picture Day. Family Picture Day, that there will be at least one shot that every single person will A, be smiling, B, not be picking their nose, and C, be looking at the camera all at one time, which if you have a big family, oh, moms, dads, I'm praying for you. Maybe you're just praying that you can actually get on church on one time. Here's the reason why we're talking about this today. Because if you track through the New Testament and you track through the life of Jesus, the New Testament is filled with miracle upon miracle upon miracle. And some of them, I call these like the fun for you miracles, like Jesus turning water into wine, or when he walked on water, he has some miracles like that. But he also had some massive life-giving miracles of healing people, from turning blind to sight, of raising Lazarus from the dead. And if you look through the Bible, it's easy to think a few different ways about the miracles that you're reading. Now, if you've been in church for a while, or you're a Christian, you're a follower of Jesus, you might have the thought process that one, those are for those days and times in the ancient times. It's nothing that we could expect for today. Or two, if you're a non-Christian, you might be thinking, well, Christians are crazy and they just are up here talking to this big sky daddy who is a magic genie in a bottle and they think is going to give them whatever they want. Still, others think that, yes, God is only there as my genie in the bottle, and all I have to do is rub the little lamp, say my little prayer, and 1, 2, 3, my wishes are going to come true. And what I'd like to do today is I'd like to push back on all of that. And I would like to proclaim that Jesus is still alive. He's still present today, and he's still in the miracle working business here, today, right now. And when I say miracle working business, here's what I mean by that. 1, he has a strategy for the miracle. 2, he has a plan for why he's doing it. And 3, he has intention behind the miracles that he produces, because miracles produce the testimony of God's glory, namely who he is and who he wants us to be. And so if you have your Bibles, we are going to be spending some time in the New Testament. And if you don't, the verses will be right here on the screen below. But we're going to be starting our time in John 5, talking about a little story of one of his miracles. John 5:1. Sometime later, Jesus went up to Jerusalem for one of the Jewish festivals. Now there is in Jerusalem near the sheep gate a pool, which in Aramaic is called Bethesda, and which is surrounded by 5 colored colonnades. Here a great number of disabled people used to lie: the blind, the lame, the paralyzed. Okay, here's the interesting thing about this pool where all of these people are laying. This area, the sheep gate in this pool, this is where people would expect the fairy tales, the magic, the miracles to be produced to happen. And all of the blind, the lame, the paralyzed, anyone who was in affliction, they would come lay by this pool for one day of a year where you had to be the first person into the pool in order to be healed. Now, people would just lay there all day waiting for this one day, and then it'd be like a mad dash, a mad rush, try to get into the pool as quickly as you can. Now, before we start thinking, man, these people are a little bit crazy, they're expecting this miracle to happen in this pool of water, I would venture to say that we're actually a little bit the same. Here's what I mean by that. The other day we had the solar eclipse happening. It was great. Took my daughter out of school. We did not get to see totality, but I did see a Facebook post, which kind of ages me because if you're young and watching this, you might see the same thing on TikTok or Snapchat, but us older folk, we're on Facebook. And so I saw a Facebook post of someone proclaiming that if you saw the totality of the eclipse in a certain place at a certain time, you would experience healing. And so it was crazy here in Michigan, like crazy. The line to Toledo, Ohio, where you would experience totality down the highway was jam-packed with cars. There was accidents, like you weren't moving. You weren't getting to go see the totality in Toledo because you weren't going anywhere. And here's my point about all of this is whenever we're in a place where we need healing, whenever we are in a place where we're hurting. And I'm not just talking about physical ailments. I'm not just talking about the body or disease. I'm talking about addiction. When you've tried and tried and tried to overcome your struggle, and it just feels like no matter what you do, you end up right back in the same place that you started. I'm talking about your marriage. When your marriage, that distance in the bed just keeps getting further and further and further because the distance in your marriage between each other, you go further and further till one day you wake up and you think to yourself, I don't even know who this person is. Or for teenagers, I'm talking about that awkwardness where it feels like you have no friends. You don't even know how to connect somebody. And it is so painful to walk into the cafeteria and you're not even sure who it is that you're going to sit next to. When you're at the bottom of your pit, when you're in complete and utter darkness, what is it that you need? Hope. You need hope. You need to see a light shining in all of that darkness because where you're at, what you're dealing with, what you're walking through, you can't see the way out. You need to believe that this pit that you're currently in, this is not the place that you are going to be forever. And I just want you to let that sink in and come back to this story for a second because this guy, this is the place that he's at. Except he's been there for 38 years. 38 years dealing with this affliction, lying next to this pool, trying to make his way, army crawling his way down to the pool, and every single year on that one day, he feels his hope defeated because he didn't make it to the pool. And that's where we find him if we come back to the story. When Jesus saw him lying there and learned he had been in this condition for a long time, he asked him, do you want to get well? I'm going to throw this in here for free. Notice it doesn't say that the man was seeking Jesus. He didn't even know who Jesus was. He wasn't looking for him. No, it says that Jesus saw the man. And the reason why this is important here is because some of you watching, you've never, ever in a day of your life prayed to someone called Jesus. Or maybe you were just sitting there thinking about all of the things that you're dealing with, and you started looking for answers out of the pit that you're in, and you've been searching and you just happen to stumble on this video. Maybe you're in a place where you just are experiencing crippling debt. The bill collectors keep calling. Man, you're talking about a pit. You're thinking to yourself, yeah, I'm in a pit. I have no idea how I'm going to get out of this. Or maybe you're a parent and you're trying to figure out how to pay the next bill, how to put food on the table. And meanwhile, you got a field trip form and a prom form and a sports fee piled up. And you just don't know how you're going to provide for your kids. Or maybe you're a college student. And all around you, everybody's trying to tell you who you should be, what you need to do. You need to take your tests, you need to take your exams, you have 1 million credits, you've got your extracurriculars, and all the while you're wondering, how am I even going to survive these 4 years to see if I can find a job after this? My point of all of this, here's what I can promise you, is that if you're sitting here and you don't know how you ended up here, it's because you're meant to watch this video for a reason. It's because while you're looking for the answer, Jesus is looking for you. The fact that you're sitting here right now is the beginning of your Jesus story. And the reason why I'm excited about that is that's because we all start in that same place, looking and trying to find an answer, and Jesus comes in to solve it. And so if you come back one more time, Jesus said to the man, "Do you want to get well?" "Sir," the invalid replied, "I have no one to help me into the pool when the water is stirred. While I'm trying to get in, someone else goes down ahead of me." Then Jesus said to him, "Get up, pick up your mat and walk." And this part's huge and it's a little bit controversial, and we're going to come back to that in just a second. At once the man was cured. He picked up his mat and walked. At once the man was healed. At once, get up and walk. And I want you to lean into this, because why? That's my question. Why, out of all of the people in this crowd, why to a man who wasn't coming to seek him, who knew nothing about him, why did Jesus determine to perform this miracle for this man in this moment? Well, I believe that it's because miracles produce testimony.
I'm Ken Atwood.
I am Jessica Atwood, and this is our Jesus story. So Kent and I started dating when I was 18 and he was 21, and it was a match made in party girl heaven. We were best friends. We partied a lot. I was raised a Christian, so I knew enough to know that we weren't living right. But I had kind of strayed and started following the world's path. And the world had really influenced me and caused me to have a lot of doubts. So Kent proposed. And within like shorter than 2 years, we were married. And then at the beginning of our marriage, I was expecting to be happy and peaceful, but I wasn't. I was unhappy still. And, you know, in my mind, I think I was blaming him, but really, when I was honest with myself, I had never really been happy. You know, I had struggled with insecurity, anxiety, different bondages, like substance abuse, and like I just really like couldn't shake these things, right? And that is when I came to the point of like really seeking God hard. I started praying bold prayers, like, God, please show yourself to me. Like, if you are real, God, please show yourself to me. Like, I will follow you. I just need to know it's the truth. I can't give up things I love. I can't live this lifestyle if it's not real. Like, I need to know it's real. So I was just seeking him, and he showed up. You know, I just had the full experience. Like, I saw, you know, I had a brief moment where I saw scales fall off my eyes, and like the weights lifted, the grass was greener, the sky was bluer. It was beautiful. Like, I was saved. Like, I believed. Like, I saw the whole world differently. And then came the time when I had to tell my newlywed husband about this. So this was probably 6 months into us being married. And we were at home, he's watching TV. I come to him, I'm sitting on my knees. I'm like, Kent, I found God, and I can't get drunk anymore. I need to start going to church. I want to start tithing. Like, I'm all in. Like, I found him. And, you know, I understand. I gave him the out because I understood that this had to have been like really heavy for him to digest. And I said, you know, if you want to leave, I understand, because I know this isn't what you signed up for.
That was really hard for me. I mean, that was complete 180 of what we were doing the previous, you know, few years, and just completely caught me off guard, and I didn't know how to react, but I was going to go along for the ride.
Yeah. Luckily, he didn't leave. So we started, you know, going to church together. We still maintained our old friends. We never really found like a community in a church. I always felt like, I kind of felt like I was too holy for the worldly, but too worldly for the holy. So I never really fit in. But we were doing our thing, and we were going to church, and started having children. After our two oldest boys, after we had both of them, we were in church one Sunday, and the song "Do It Again" came on, and I felt like God spoke to me in my heart. And in John, it says, you know, my sheep will hear my voice and follow me. I believe that we can have this relationship with God. It's one of the most beautiful privileges of being a Christian. So I felt like he spoke to me and said, Jessica, I'm not done moving mountains for you. Why have you stopped asking me and having faith? And I guess my immediate reaction to it was, there's no mountains left to move. And I felt that he told me, I want to give you a daughter, or I'm going to give you a daughter, among some other things. That was the gist of my experience. And I went home that night and I took a pregnancy test, and it was positive. So I'm like, oh, confirmation, I'm pregnant with a girl. But then part of me knew, right? Biblically speaking, when God intervenes, it's often, always, not immediate. And also, if you take time to really listen to the words of the song, there's a part that says, your promise still stands, great is your faithfulness. You never failed me yet. It really didn't sound like an immediate moving of mountains, right? So I was pregnant with Trey, my third boy, our third boy.
At this point, I was still along for the ride, and but I wasn't really truly happy. I still love Jessica and my family, but I knew I was disconnected, and I was just along for a ride at this point.
And we could see it. He wasn't really engaged with the kids. They didn't have a great relationship at that point, and he seemed unhappy. So we could see that. I knew that we were kind of, but marriage and parenting is hard anyway, and we still did love each other, but it was just tough. But shortly after that, things got worse, because right around the time Trey was born, there were a couple incidents where money was spent, and there was some like dishonesty in our relationship. And at that time, after the second event, I really felt like our marriage was broken.
The second time it happened, I was just in a dark spot. I thought it was over, so I didn't really care what happened. I just did whatever I wanted, spent money on buying stuff for myself and the house, and I just didn't care because I thought it was over at that point.
In church, I was so completely broken. I'm like, this is not how I imagined my life going. My marriage is like over. How am I going to raise 3 Christian boys in a broken home? And then beyond that, I felt like God had given me a promise, which now was just absolutely impossible. And outside of even those 2 events, I had been struggling with health issues for the last 7 years. I had been struggling with debilitating insomnia. And for all these things, I was praying often, but I really wasn't seeing a breakthrough. And in that moment, I'm just thinking, like, what if God my perception of God is wrong? What if he really doesn't care about our lives this side of heaven? It's just all about this next life. And I prayed a prayer of surrender in that moment because, truth be told, right, what he did on the cross for us was enough. And in my prayer, I said that to him, and I just asked for extra grace to walk this walk because I knew I was probably going to have a bad attitude and I needed some help. And then I pray and we stand up for closing worship, and I look over at my husband and he's crying like a lot.
As I was going through the routine on another Sunday, I heard, I've given you everything that you've ever asked for, you know, in your head, and this is what you're going to do with it. And I heard, go up and get baptized right now. And I lost it.
And so I watched him walk up and then walk on the stage to get baptized, and the song Waymaker is playing. And the words that are being broadcast across the church are, even when you don't see it, I'm working. Even when you don't feel it, I'm working. And I felt like that was just such a confirmation from God to me that this was real. And he left when we reunited, he was just beaming about his experience. Like, he didn't even want to talk about us. It was just like, I can't believe that just happened to me. I can't believe that just happened to me. And, you know, he's a changed man. He's the world's best father now. His like countenance completely changed from like, you know, like kind of an angry undertone to like joy and peace. And, you know, our relationship has thrived because now we're united under God. And, you know, and then since that day, God has answered every one of my prayers that I was broken with in that moment. So
we had LA.
Yeah, we had LA. I have freedom from insomnia. And we were brought, we were even given like a Christian community. So this was during COVID, and then after COVID, we were able to find UCC. And here we have found the true meaning of Christian community and have met some of the most amazing people. And so even beyond, you know, he just blessed us in so many ways.
God told Kent, get up and walk. Go be baptized. Look at all of the things I have given you. Go and sin no more. And in that one moment, Jesus transformed the trajectory of Kent and Jessica and their entire family's life in that one moment. If you listen to that testimony, their lives are a walking, breathing testimony to the way that God's miracles are still working in people's lives today. And here's the craziest thing, and the thing I love about their story. Jessica talked about the fact that there was a time when Kent wasn't the most engaged father. He was distanced, he was pulled away, wanted nothing to do with it. If you were in our church today, you would see Kent leading children's ministry and Jessica serving in the preschool where they served together in that ministry. You would see him out there playing with his boys, rushing from church to football to coach's boys, running himself ragged every which way. And the one thing about their story, if you really, when I sat down to talk with him, is that their favorite part of their story is now how they get to go share it with the people in their lives, their family members that are struggling, where they say, I just know that if they got around us, if they would listen to what we're saying, if they could experience what God brought into our lives, I just know that it would completely be the answer and transform their lives too. And come back to the story for a minute. You guys, this is so good. Because what did Jesus just tell this lame dude? Pick up your mat and walk. And remember I said we were going to come back to it? Here's the big thing. Jews considered in that time, in that age, considered picking up the mat and walking with it to be work. And this was the cardinal sin of the day and age because you were working on the Sabbath. This wasn't just like, oh, yep, I made a little mistake. This was a deadly sin in the eyes of the Jewish culture and the Jewish religious leaders of that day and age. This day, Sabbath. And if you check out what happens next in John 5:9, the day on which this took place was a Sabbath. And so the Jewish leaders said to the man who had been healed, "It is the Sabbath. The law forbids you to carry your mat." But he replied, "The man who made me well said, 'Pick up your mat and walk.'" So they asked him, "Well, who is this fellow who told you to pick it up and walk?" The man who was healed had no idea who it was, for Jesus had slipped away into the crowd that was there. Later, Jesus found him at the temple and said to him, "See, you are well again. Stop sinning or something worse may happen to you." The man went away and told the Jewish leaders that it was Jesus who made him well. How do we know that God is still in the miracle working business today? Because miracles produce the testimony of who He is. And testimony is the single most effective way for people to know and discover who Jesus is. I'm going to be real with you. Most people, they're not going to open up the door when you go door knocking to ask, do they know heaven or do you know hell? Most people that you meet in line at a grocery store, they're too focused on scanning their items and getting away to stop and have a conversation with somebody who's asking them, do you know Jesus? Most people are not in a place where they're going to just sit and on their own say, yes, 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 I want to know about heaven or hell. But what people will listen to is a testimony of how God, how Jesus has worked in your life and what He has done to change the trajectory of it. Just as because family will know that when she talks about Alay and the fact that she was told that she would have a daughter, and after they had Trey, that they thought they were getting a divorce, and yet here is this little living, breathing, cute as a button child, they will know that that is the product of a miracle. Kent's friends were going to stop in their tracks when they see that he's not the same person that he was 5 years ago. They see him rushing off to coaching, and when he tells them, no, you guys, I heard God speak to me, they will know that that is real and that is true for what his experience was. When he says, I heard God say, stop. Why are you wasting all I've given you? Go and sin no more. Appreciate what it is I have blessed you with. And if you go back into this story, in John, you'll read that the religious leaders went away at this time to begin persecuting Jesus. This was the time when they started devising a strategy because they were so angry that someone would claim to know better than them and tell someone to get up and walk. And second, this is the defense that Jesus replied. In his defense, Jesus said to him, my Father is always at his work to this very day, and I too am working. For this reason, they tried all the more to kill him. Not only was he breaking the Sabbath, but he was even calling God his own Father, making himself equal with God. And that is what testimony is. Jesus doing such Jesus things that people can't stop and say it's anything except for a miracle working God at work in their life. And when you step into a church, this is why you see people worshiping with their hands raised. This is why you see people dancing, because they are experiencing miracle working day in and day out. They are experiencing God proving who He is to them. And even in their darkest moments, they are relying on the faith and the belief that my God is still working today, even if I can't see it. This is why I choose to preach, is because I believe and have seen Jesus transform my life. I have seen healing in my life, over my past. I've seen healing in my family. And I know, listen, I know that if God can do it in my life, that He can do it in yours also. And sometimes the miracle that you prayed for, that's going to be your story. One day, your story is going to be saying, look what he did when I wasn't even looking for him. And if you come back, that is the whole point of that miracle. To the point where if you go to the very last book of the Bible, and we're going to get real apocalyptic, right? Just a second, check this out. Talking about the end times. How do we win in the end times when the world is going to pieces? How do we win? Revelations 12:11, they, the believers, you and me, defeated him, Satan, through the blood of the Lamb and the bold word of their witness. Through testimony, through your Jesus story. And so how do we end all of this? If you're in a place where you are in need of a miracle, then I would encourage you, start seeking out where is God working it in your favor. And for those of you that have your own Jesus story, here's what we do with it. We shout it to the ends of the earth. We tell the next person that we encounter, that you're in relationship with, that you're walking beside in life, you tell that next person, hey, this is what he did in mine. And I can promise you that the power of your testimony is what has the power to defeat people's darkest moments, when they just need a little bit of hope in the darkness of wherever they're sitting at, when they just need to see a little bit of light. And so here's what we're going to do today. We're going to pray. Father God, I am just so thankful. I'm so thankful that not only are you a living God, not only are you active in your relationship with us today, Father, I am so thankful that you are a God who is still producing miracles, that you are still healing people, that you are still walking beside people, that you have the ability to look for people. Father, I would just ask that anybody who might be in a pit, that they have the ability to look their eyes up, that you would showcase a moment of hope to them, a hope that would say, take one step further because I'm right here walking beside you. And above all else, I pray that our church would be Jesus' people, pointing back to the glory of who he is and who he wants us to be. I pray this all in Jesus' name. Amen.